Good news everybody, patch 6.2 has finally entered the PTR phase, so hopefully we should be seeing it maybe within the next 3 months. Now, when I was writing the script for this video, I noticed that, well, there were 10 points, so we're going to be going through the 10 major things that you should know about patch 5.2. And some of this stuff's really cool. We've got Tanaan Jungle, we've got the new raid, Timewalker Dungeons, the adventure guide, Mythic Dungeons, the legendary quest, PvP, loads of things, but don't worry, there will be no spoilers. This video is going to be a mixture of stuff that we found out via data mining and the official patch notes, and the PTR servers are currently down. Once they come back online, then I'll have loads of gameplay videos and things like that on the channel, but for now, this should hopefully be your one-stop video which will cover all the major stuff that's going on. If you want to dive deep into class changes, then it's probably worth hitting up the notes for yourself. The PTR should be up within the next 12 hours, so if you're into seeing shiny stuff and lots of gameplay of the new content, then be sure to stay subscribed to the channel. Number 10. Alright, first of all, let's tackle the main bit of world content, Tanaan Jungle. This zone is going to both contain daily quests and have open world rare mobs and treasures, so initially it does sound like a bit of a mix of, say, the Timeless Isle and a bit of more traditional patch content, which initially, to me, sounds like a very good thing. I think world content is really what patch 6.0 and patch 6.1 were lacking, so it's good that that will hopefully be fulfilled in this patch. Now, what is of particular interest is that this zone is actually unlocked by building a shipyard in your garrison, more on that later. No spoilers, but from listening to the data mined sound files, it seems like there is an initial starting chain of quests that's fully voice acted and sort of tells the big initial story of how we get into Tanaan. Other than that, though, information is a tad sparse about Tanaan. The good news is the data mining did reveal quite a lot about the various other things that are going on. Number 9. Next, let's cover the major garrison feature, which is the Shipyard. This is constructed from a level 3 garrison, and it is essentially your gateway into Tanaan Jungle as we attack via the sea. Now, in addition to being a key part of the story, it also has a few gameplay systems. You're able to construct ships and then dispatch them on missions. We don't have a great amount in the way of, say, details, but honestly, I'm not that enthused by something akin to follower missions, and I very much hope they make it different and, if possible, manage to integrate gameplay with our actual characters. The shipyard itself, though, has its own resource, which, rather aptly named, is Shipyard Resources. So far we know that you get them from Tanaan, and I do hope that the methods of acquisition feel a little bit less grindy than the Apexis missions that we currently have. In terms of ship types that you can build, well, currently we know there are destroyers, carriers, transports, dreadnoughts, and submarines. I assume that each kind of ship will probably be better at various kinds of missions. In addition to that, there are also ship upgrades, with examples being navigational charts to make their mission time a bit shorter, and then there's also stabilizer fins and a shark tank. I'm sure plenty will be added as time goes on. Now, also, according to datamine strings, it looks like ships that fail missions for these special, I think they're called dangerous missions, have a 50% chance of being destroyed. And while things like that do sound cool and risky, I would worry that it will turn into a time-wasting kind of grind cycle mechanic where you're just getting resources to replenish things. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Number 8. Next, let's talk about the raid. This is going to be really exciting, actually. We are, well, going to assault Hellfire Citadel, which is a new 13-boss raid. According to the patch notes, we will be attempting to stop the Burning Legion's now impending invasion of Azeroth, and it seems like we've got two main players in Tanaan. You've got the Burning Legion on one hand, and then also the Iron Horde, who presumably are sort of trying to fight them off or something, because, well, they ain't our friend. Now, there are 13 bosses in this raid. They are the Hellfire Assault and the Iron Reaver, which both seem like sort of mech-style bosses. There's also the Hellfire High Council, a guy called Cormrock, then there's Kilrog, Deadeye, Terran Gorefiend, Shadowlord Iskar, which is kind of interesting if you are into the lore. There's also Fell Lord Zakuun, Zul'Harok, Sokrathar, Tyrant Velhair, something like that. Manaroth, who just, got resurrected for the sheer hell of it. And then Archimonde. Yes, we'll be fighting off Archimonde. It seems like he is the main dude of this expansion after all. Odd. Now, I think that 13 is a great number of bosses, though there should be a good degree of non-linearity. I really did love that in BRF and Highmaul. Judging by the maps, it seems like there will be both linear sections and branching paths. Certainly, it's got my interest. I really do love the Legion, though I cannot help but feel that they missed an opportunity with Alt-Universe Draxus Eridar, Lord of the Burning Legion. I think he should have been the true end boss of Warlords of Draenor, but it would seem that they just did not see sense and failed to add that to the game. Very disappointing. I personally will be quitting over this. Number 7. And next, of course, with a new raid comes a new raid tier of gear, and tier 18 seems to differ from past tiers in terms of how they're designing the sets. It seems, to me anyway, as if they are designing the sets based more off the class, rather than the aesthetic of the actual raid. Of course, they will probably, well, they do integrate the raid aesthetic into sets where they can, but it does look a bit less contrived in some ways, and I think this is a great philosophy, because while it did yield some crazy-ass clown gear in the Burning Crusade, it also resulted in some of the most iconic sets in the game, and I know certainly looking at these sets, yeah, maybe a few of them are a bit wonky, but I think the Rogue one's really badass. I really like the Hunter one, it feels huntery. The Warrior one is really, really cool. And what I have noticed is quite a few of them have got, maybe if the set doesn't look great, they do have some really nifty shoulders that could make a fantastic transmog. And as much as the Death Knight one is a little bit wacky and weird, and I really don't like the helm, I think the rest of it's pretty cool, and I can see some really good transmog opportunities with it. So yeah, lots of cool shoulders and a few nice sets. Now this, these bits of gear are not 100% sort of the full high-res perfect versions. There may be bugs here and there, and we will probably have sort of perfect views of them later on in the PTR process. Set bonuses have been data mined, but I would take them with a massive, massive grain of salt. The current item levels for this gear is 695 for normal, 710 for heroic, and 725 for mythic, which seems like a decently reasonable hop up from what we're getting in the Blackrock Foundry. Number 6. Next, let us not forget the legendary quest and the associated ring. So the quest will, of course, continue. I've listened to the audio files, but this is a spoiler-free video, so I'll hold off until another video for that, but suffice to say it all sounds pretty cool. What we do know is that the ring will be finished. If Mists of Pandaria is anything to go by, then this indicates that this will be the last tier of the expansion. If it were also the last patch of the expansion, then Blizzard's idea of getting closer to a yearly expansion could be a thing. Though I actually hope that's not really the case. I would prefer that half the number of expansions were in existence if each expansion lived up to its full potential, and I feel like if they rush through WoD, then maybe it wouldn't live up to that potential. I mean, hell, I think a Farallon tier would have been really fun. Anyway, getting back onto the topic of the legendary ring does have a full proc. Right now, it is bonkers dumb, but a watcher actually said that people directly said, take it with a grain of salt, it's very early, so I would imagine that the actual proc that we'll get on our legendary rings will be one that makes sense, and not the current one, which, did I mention, is very dumb. Number 5. Next, let's hop over to a feature that personally I am very excited and I've wanted to see in the game for ages. Mythic Dungeons have finally been added, and this is a feature I'm just so happy to see it. Now, these are aimed at players who enjoy difficult, small group content, and rather interestingly, they have a weekly lockout, which is good for a complete number of ways, and it allows Blizzard to have a lot more design freedom with them, especially in terms of the gear that they reward. Now, this very much does communicate the mindset that it is kind of a raid-like environment. That's something I really do like. The gear that they drop is 680 normally, but there's a chance of the end boss actually dropping an item level 700 bit of gear. And it seems like that does slot in quite well with the current level of raid gear, and the good thing about the weekly lockout is it means that people won't feel forced to farm these for hours and hours on end. The real benefit of it being a weekly lockout is they can actually put decent gear in there, make it pretty challenging, and, well, people won't be able to farm it for 7 days straight and burn themselves out. I think it's a very good way of doing things. Now, that's all great, but It does kinda suck that there is not a new dungeon. Launching Mythics alongside new dungeon content would have been great, and it really is unfortunate that they have not been able to do that, despite previously saying that mid-expansion dungeons were on their priority list for Warlords of Draenor after the negative feedback that Mists of Pandaria got for not having any, 5-player content in the duration of the expansion. Now, also on the topic of dungeons, challenge mode gear is actually going to be 680 now, rather than 600. Though, of course, the differences between CMs and Mythics are massive. The Mythics have got a full loot table that's itemized, gear isn't normalized, so maybe some of your raid members could take a newly dinged character through them to help them gear up. There really is a lot more that you can do without the normalization of challenge modes, and also the fact that a single bit of random loot per day is completely different, fundamentally, from a loot table. So I'm very happy to see this feature, and I think it could be a real positive for the game moving into the future. Number 4. Next, let's cover the PvP side of things. So, let's just talk about gear levels first up. As of patch 6.2, all non-PvP gear will scale either up to item level 690 if it is below 690, or down to 715 if it is above 715. Then the new Conquest gear is item level 735, when of course you're in PvP combat, which is slightly above Mythic Warforged gear. And now we don't actually know much about the actual PvP content, however there have been data mined maps of the mines underneath Ashran, so perhaps they are extending the regular Ashran battle into an extra level or something like that, which could be good, though admittedly Ashran doesn't really hype me up that much. Now, I am a bit sad that they have not announced a big new battleground or an arena. It's actually been over 2 years since we've got either of those, certainly more than 2 years by the time this patch comes out. I suppose whipping up a new arena wouldn't take that long, and maybe that would be nice, especially if they were to play around with interesting geometry, and perhaps even some mechanics within the arena itself. Number 3. We've also got a new feature called the Adventure Guide. This is essentially a revamped dungeon journal. It's been renamed as well to the Adventure Guide, and from what I can tell, the main difference is that it will suggest content to you and perhaps provide more of a starting point to kind of point people in the right direction. Now that's most of the patch notes stuff with some info mixed in. I'm now going to dive into more of the data mined topics. Number 2. And first up, we've got Timewalker Dungeons, which is pretty cool in my opinion. Currently, the PTR has a selectable dungeon type called Timewalker Lich King, that appears to scale people down to the numbers of Lich King heroic dungeons. There are actually some screenshots of people doing the Halls of Lightning. This is really exciting to me, and I can definitely see myself throwing a lot of time at this feature. Hopefully the rewards are good though. There isn't really much solid confirmation as to what they are, and I should clarify it, by good I mean interesting, not necessarily high item level or anything like that. Now this feature was not in the patch notes, which means that we've got no way of actually knowing whether it will ship with patch 6.2. It is entirely possible that they're just putting it in here for testing, though it does seem likely that it will be in 6.2, since it is a sort of prominent part of what's going on the PTR. Number 1. And next, people love mounts, so let's just cover the mounts. There are 6 new ones. The Fell Steel Annihilator comes from killing Mythic Archimond, which I'm sure just about all of us will do, right? Yeah, there's also the Reigns of the Corrupted Dreadwing. That comes from Glory of the Hellfire Raider, which is just the regular meta achievement. There's also the Infernal Direwolf. It costs 150,000 Apexis crystals, so have fun with that one. Then there's also the Fellblood Gronling, which comes from an achievement called Kalecki the Boy Gladiator, which is named after Chris Kalecki, who is one of the PvP designer people over at Blizzard. Then there are 2 new vicious PvP mounts, one being a Kodo and the other one being a Mechanostrider. I've got to say, some of the new mounts are really nifty, but I would like to point out that I really hope we get that cool Ironhorde Wolf that is data mined but currently not in the game. I think that would be really nice to see. Alright, so that's all the main stuff covered. I'll just quickly run through a few little miscellaneous things which may or may not be of interest. Now, there are also lots of class changes, but it's so early on that I wouldn't really bother reading too much into it. There will be massive amounts of iteration as time goes on. Also, Apexis crystals are now uncapped, which you'll need in order to farm that new wolf mount that I mentioned. It sounds like a tremendously tedious process. Perhaps patch 6.2 will give us some more interesting ways to earn Apexis doing 187 garrison missives just doesn't sound like a lot of fun. They've also added in some new pets and toys in the patch, and there are a few new epic items that appear to come from pickpocketing also. The Dark Moon Fair will get a minor update, there are new fish which you can fish up on the island, and also some new potions that you can purchase. So that's pretty much it for the video, and really that's all the main bits of information that we know currently, without going into spoilers of the story. I've got to say patch 6.2 does look like it's got a decent amount of content, but the proof of the pudding will be in the eating, and we, of course, need to get into the PTR. The realms are currently offline as of the time of recording, but by, 12 hours from now they should be up, and I will be pumping out loads of videos showing you every single new feature and shiny thing in detail. It should be a lot of fun, so stay tuned to the channel for all that stuff. Thank you very much for watching this video. Let me know what your thoughts are right now for patch 6.2, and I will see you next time.